as a continuation off of yesterday's video, I want to talk today a little bit about this very deep, very transformative, very deep learning period that we are moving through at this time for the month of November and December. There are a few aspects of this learning that need to be understood in order for us to really be able to get the learning out of the experiences that we're having, and like how you can show up differently, how you can show up in that better version of yourself. And so there are a few basic principles that I want to talk about. And I really, really need to talk about the ego, because the recognition of the ego's function and how it works and how it is processing information. So as a self-mastery coach, I often talk to clients about really knowing yourself on a very, very deep level. And that's what this energy in November and December is asking us to do, is to get to know ourselves on a significantly deeper level than we have ever before. And this brings a tremendous amount of insecurity to the surface, because most people don't know who they are. No, most people don't understand that who they are and what they are. So how they think, how they feel, how they act is continuously creating their experience. It is continuously forming their reality. So really what November and December is highlighting for us, and what the astrology, what the cosmos and what the universe is saying to you is, hey, can you get to know yourself better on a very deep level? Connect to yourself more. And when I talk very deep, this is meeting yourself at whatever depth you can meet yourself at. Okay? You can't jump from the top floor of a building down to the ground, right? There's going to be some consequences of that, and it's probably not going to work out very well for you. This is the same thing. So when we are getting to know ourselves, there's a process, there's like a step to each phase of you learning who you are on a foundational level. And I want to talk a little bit about the foundational fears, actually, that every single human on this planet carries inherently within them, so that you can understand how the ego uses those fears and distorts your experiences, your knowing, your worldview based off of those primal fears that we all carry within ourselves. And this is why it's so important to get to know yourself, to get to know your ego, to get to know your triggers and figure yourself out. Because when you do, you are going to be able to rise out of those primal fears. They're not going to be controlling and running your life. They're not going to be dictating how you respond, how you show up to situations, circumstances, to people. And they're certainly not going to be the foundation for your triggers any longer. So in 2020, there was a process that started where the universe started to, and this is, I think, one of the absolute benefits of COVID, was that it gave us this time to start opening up, to start reflecting, to start looking at ourselves on a significantly deeper level. And this unfolding, this awakening process, this very deep awakening process that began in 2020 has been continuously unfolding for the last 4 years. It has had some considerable highs and some considerable lows for many of us, meaning that we had some really extraordinary experiences through our awakening process. And we also have had some very deep, shadowy, dark, we can call that dark night of the soul, because that's what it's called, experiences that have really shaped us, that have really formed us, that have really begun to unfurl something within us, open something up within us. And I'm sure you can feel this on a core level within yourself. And I'm sure if you look back to 2020 and how that isolation period, how that time away from other people really gave you this opportunity to start looking at yourself and spend time with yourself, just to be instead of always do, then you're going to see how there has been a progression. There has been an unfolding that you have been moving through, even if you couldn't fully comprehend what exactly that was, or even if you couldn't understand what you were actually moving through. And something that's really beautiful about astrology, and this is, I think, why I got so into it and so interested in learning more and more about it, and have been moving through this ongoing process of learning about astrology, is because I find that it truly is this roadmap. It's this beautiful dance between energies, and it's this constant revelation of our inner union journey. It has been constantly showing us who we are, what we are. And astrology is always guiding us back to oneness, consciousness that is in its deepest foundations, love. So the process of ascension is nothing more than a divine path back to inner union, back to love, and back to God, back to our Creator. And it's not because we've ever been separate from Creator, even though most people consider themselves or feel like they are separate from their Creator. This isn't why we are moving back. This isn't why we are ascending. The ascension is actually a remembering. It is remembering that we are divine. It is remembering that we are connected to a source that is greater than all of us. It is remembering that there is a very, very deeply intelligent source and system and structure and divine matrix that is set up, that we are all a part of, that we have felt separate from, and that we are now becoming aware of again. This is ascension. Awareness is bird's eye view, right? Seeing things from a higher perspective. So it's like we're becoming aware that we are moving back to that unity, that we are reconnecting. It's not even moving back. We're just simply reconnecting on a conscious level, because the only thing that has been keeping us separate from God is our consciousness, is our own mind. It is the ego, because energetically, you cannot sever yourself. So now, hopefully this kind of helps you to see why ascension would be such a difficult journey, why this process to inner union and to full reconnection to Source Creator would be such a hard journey, because through that illusion of separation, you constantly feel alone. You constantly feel like you're struggling on your own and you have to figure things out on your own. And being in a 3D world makes us very brainwashed, is the best word I can use, in believing that we are separate from everything and from everyone, right? Because we are in a material world. We are in physical bodies, and there is a separateness from my body to your body. There's a separateness between me and this table. There's a separateness between me and the camera, right? 11:11 on the clock as I'm looking at this. So there is just such an illusion of separation that we all collectively experience, right? That we have to rise above to be able to see past that illusion and recognize that there is no separateness, that we are actually in oneness, that we are all connected to one energy system. And astrology just does such a beautiful job, because those heavenly bodies, all the planets up there, all the stars, meteors, everything in the sky, in the heavens, has a frequency, has its own energy, has a certain vibration. And that is influencing us, especially when it passes by. This is why eclipses influence us and bring great changes, and why eclipses used to be feared, but also highly respected. This is why all the different experiences that we have of the universe and of the cosmos is so special, because there's a constant emanation of frequency. There's a constant energy that is influencing us. And so since 2020, the energies have been like slowly but surely just amping up and continuously moving towards this process of experiencing great highs and great lows as we move through the ascension process. And even though most people would say, the lows really suck and the lows were really lows, and I myself had tremendously, I want to say like almost devastating experiences of lows. When I went through those experiences, I recognized that the whole purpose was only it wasn't because, God was punishing me in some kind of way. Quite the contrary. It was to help illuminate my shadows. It was to help to see parts of myself. And what are shadows? Limitations. It was perfectly curated and designed to help me see all of the limitations within myself. And that's what this astrology does. And that's why I said in November and December, we have this amplification of energy that is going to be bringing a lot of lows out for a lot of people. So it's going to really bubble to the surface a ton of the shadow aspects of the self. But for that specific reason only, is to help illuminate, help you to see where you are limiting yourself, where you have separated yourself from divinity, where you have separated yourself from your own power, from the creator that you actually are, and how you have limited yourself, how you have held yourself back. This entire journey is about you coming home to yourself. You're not coming home to anything else. You are coming home to yourself. Know thyself is one of my favorite sayings. I absolutely love it, and it runs through my head all the time, almost on a daily basis. And it's because it is so incredibly important to know yourself. If you don't know yourself, you are lost. You don't know where you end and where you begin. You don't know what's yours and what's somebody else's. You don't know what you're capable of and what you're not capable of. Like, you have to know yourself on a very deep level. And this is what these months, these energies, these days right now, today, tomorrow, the 22nd, the 23rd, the next 3 days, this entire week, the second half of this week is so incredibly important, and it is so valuable. It has so much to offer in terms of assisting you with your awakening process, in terms of helping you rise out of those shadow aspects of yourself that you have allowed yourself to live in for way too long. And the coming home process, or the coming home journey, coming home to the self, what that really means is that you recognize the feminine and the masculine aspects within yourself, and you bring them back into harmony. You bring them back into balance. So as a woman, you are comfortable in your femininity. You are comfortable being soft, being nurturing, being loving and kind, compassionate, and then simultaneously embodying the masculine aspect of yourself, which is the action taker, which is strong, resilient, capable, goes for things, is willing to challenge themselves, right? These are all masculine aspects. It's like, can you merge the two? Can you see how you can be both, and how you are meant to be both, and how you can experience yourself as this balanced version of the masculine and the feminine within you in your daily life? Because November, December is all about the daily life. There's this emphasis on, can you just recognize and see and have enough awareness through your daily life, through your daily actions, through your normal day-to-day stuff that you do, how the feminine, how the masculine shows up within you, how you embody these two principles of energy, or how you don't embody these two principles, how they are out of whack, how they are, maybe you're too masculine as a female, or maybe you're too feminine as a female, right? Like, there has to be balance. And then as a masculine, are you too much in your masculine energy and not enough in your feminine energy? Do you allow yourself to receive? Do you allow yourself to be vulnerable? Do you allow yourself to be seen, to be emotional, to feel your feelings? This is how most masculines in today's world, in today's society, are out of balance, is that they're overly masculine. So they're taskmasters. They're on the go constantly. They're always action taking, but they have no idea how to just be. I'm going to talk about beingness in just a moment. So it's about learning to love all aspects of yourself. It's about seeing the shadow. This November is going to test your shadow. It's going to bring it forth again to help you leave certain aspects of your shadow in 2024 so that you can begin 2025 in a shifted energy, in a new energy, in a more balanced energy. And this isn't about changing things overnight or becoming this like superhuman version of yourself overnight. This is a process. The whole idea of balancing masculine and feminine is patience. It requires patience. Do you have patience with yourself? Are you gaslighting yourself? Are you upset with yourself when you make mistakes? Are you always looking at the mistakes that you make and you forget to see all the beauty, the wonder, the love that you offer to other people, to your environment, to your community, to yourself? So in November, December, we are in another one of these peak energies where the energy is really, really high. It is very intense, but very powerful at the same time. And what we are asked to do is to simply tap in, to become aware of what the energy is trying to guide you towards, so that you can ascend quicker. So when we have these peak energies, what that peak energy is really meant to do is to help you ascend faster, like so much faster. It really accelerates growth. You can overcome stuff literally overnight if you know how to work with the energy, if you become really aware, if you're really tapped in. If you are aware enough of the energy that you are currently experiencing and what that's doing to you and what it's trying to do or what it's meant to be doing for you. So for the rest of 2024, for all of November and for all of December, but particularly for the next 3 to 4 days, so for like the rest of this week, there are 3 words that I want you to make your mantra. And those 3 words are presence, being, and stillness. This is like the prerequisite that you are going to need to embody in order to make this big jump, in order to have this accelerated growth that you have an opportunity right now to experience. So there's a few questions here that I'm going to ask you that I want you to just sit with, to ponder upon, journal upon even. Journaling brings a lot of awareness to the surface. It's also a great way to mind dump. But since 2020, how much of your experiences have you been able to be present with, be in beingness with, and how much time have you dedicated to stillness since 2020? And just kind of approximately try and gauge for yourself where you are at with each of these questions that I'm about to ask you. How much has your awareness expanded around your emotional responses to life? Do you find that you are still in reaction mode? Has that reaction mode softened? Just like take a moment and tune in and ask yourself that question. And now, at the end of 2024, how much are you more in response mode versus reaction mode? Response mode comes from a very non-attached observation. Have you discovered the roots of your emotional responses? Certain emotional responses, of course, the ones that are more triggering. Have you discovered what the root of those triggers are? So fundamentally, all humans have the same baseline fears where all your emotional responses come from. These baseline fears, or actually I prefer to call them primal fears, are fear of death, number 1, fear of not belonging, which is also where fear of not being accepted also comes from, fear of not being loved, and fear of being separate from God. These are actually 4 primal or baseline fears that every soul on this planet has. And out of these baseline fears, all the other fears, everything that you can think of, come from these roots. These are the roots. So what the current energy is asking you to do is to notice how all of these baseline fears or these primal fears motivate your emotional responses. Now, how well you understand this is going to depend on how present you can be with yourself, how observant you can be just in your day-to-day functioning, in your day-to-day interactions with yourself to catch it. Another message that these current energies are delivering, highlighting, and wanting us to notice is that we learn through experience, not by simply consuming knowledge. With Pluto moving into Aquarius and with the energy that it brings of this innovation, of this focus on technology, we are simultaneously being asked to observe how we use technology. And this was something I mentioned in the previous video. And what the universe is highlighting for us right now is that knowledge becomes wisdom through experience, meaning that your whole body needs to participate, not just your mind, in an experience to integrate that knowledge and for that knowledge to actually become wisdom. So it's like when you have an experience, you're having that experience with your whole being. Everything is involved. Your senses, your mind, your physical body. And through that experience is how you gain wisdom, right? Especially if you are aware, especially if you can be non-attached, if you can be more of the observer of your life. So knowing now that all of your emotional responses come from these primal fears that I mentioned, fear of death, fear of not being loved, fear of not belonging, and fear of separation from God. Now that you understand that, can you take more responsibility for your emotional responses, for your emotional reactions, we'll say? Because that's what we often do, right? Is we react in the same way over and over and over to certain triggers until you become fully aware of what that trigger is connected to on a base or foundational level, which one of those four primal fears it is connected to. And through that awareness, the trigger begins to fade. You become less reactive. It becomes less irritating. It becomes less annoying because now you understand at a core level where it is coming from, and you start to take steps to regulate or to realign your ego so that you are not triggered by that same fear or that same annoyance over and over again. And now at the same time, can you see the connection between your base fears and the belief systems that you have subconsciously built around it that have also been programmed into you from other people's baseline fears and their belief systems? So I want to use a very simple example here to kind of help illustrate what I'm saying here. So one of the primal fears, fear of death, is going to invoke within you a belief in danger, a belief in illness, a belief that you are not eternal, a belief that people are not trustworthy and therefore are not safe, a belief that people are out to get you, a belief that you need to survive life. Do you see how all these beliefs are built upon this foundation, this primal fear within the self of death? That's what I'm saying. There's so many different fears that we build upon those four primal fears. There's so many different ways in which it shows up for us in our lives. And this is why you really have to evaluate your belief system. This is why you have to really look at, what do I truly believe and why do I believe that? Is there actual divine truth in my beliefs, or is it a fear-based belief? And with this Pluto in Aquarius theme or this energy, there's also a highlight here on social media, on media in general, on information that we consume. And this could be through the form of shows, movies, podcasts, videos, shorts, whatever. If you take a look at the world, if you just take a look at the shows that you watch, ask yourself how many of those shows or how many of the things that you're into or movies or types of movies that you're into, how many of them are reinforcing these four base or primal fears within you? Like fear of death, for example, is like massively reinforced and highlighted and elevated within you when you're watching these medical dramas, when you're watching these like criminal dramas like CSI or all these like investigative type of shows, right? Talk about an activation of fear of death, right? It's like you're watching a movie or you're watching something that is an illusion. It's not real, yet it continuously reminds you of all of the things that you need to be afraid of all of the things that can possibly kill you. So it just constantly reinforces your fear of death. The fear of being separated from God, I find, is often reinforced by like horror movies, thriller movies, paranormal, lots and lots of paranormal. Like people, again, if you don't understand the paranormal or if you don't understand the spirit world, then you are going to activate this fear of being separate from God all the time. It's like you're going to believe in the darkness more than you believe in the light. And these types of shows, these types of movies, this type of content in general is going to constantly reinforce that belief. It is, and it's subconscious. Like you're not even aware that it's reinforcing it. And on some level, you might find it entertaining, or you might like the thrill or the adrenaline rush that, you get from watching scary content or things that are interesting or mysterious or whatever, but simultaneously you're not noticing that it's completely triggering these fears within you. It's keeping them alive. within you. Fear of not belonging, or fear of not being accepted, by community, by your peers, by other people in general, is very much reinforced through movies, TV shows that are about prejudice, that are about, those specific topics of non-acceptance. Or even within the LGBTQ community, there is a huge fear, that I've noticed, that reinforces not belonging, that reinforces separation. Our sexuality should not determine our belongingness. We belong. We all belong because we are all a member of society. We all make up society. It's like each of us is a drop in the ocean, right? Making up one big ocean. So there shouldn't be any separateness, and yet there is. Fear of not being loved is often actually reinforced by romance movies, by these very fictional, illusionary, unrealistic romantic movies. And if you think about it, most romantic movies they all kind of start off with some type of a heartbreak, right? Like something that, somebody gets dumped or whatever. And then in the end, she meets somebody else and he's just greater than great. And then, it all works out happily ever after, right? But there's always this element of, well, first she was rejected, first she was unloved, or first he was rejected or unloved, right? So family abuse and like trauma depictions, right? Movies that are about that really, really reinforce your beliefs about not being lovable, especially if you have wounding around that already. Oh my God, it just like accentuates that belief within you even more. See, it didn't just happen to me. See, it happens to other people, right? Like, it puts you immediately in that category of, and in that belief system of not being lovable. So I just wanted to bring some awareness to that, because I think a lot of people don't realize what they watch because it's entertaining, right? And and it's so hard sometimes, because once you become, sort of hyper aware or hyper conscious of these things, it becomes really difficult to watch things. It becomes, I'm so hyper selective about what I consume now, and the type of movies or the types of shows that I give time and attention to. If it is not uplifting me, if it is not reaffirming my own beliefs about love, about unity, about friendship or support, about divinity or God, if it is not reinforcing those beliefs within me, I don't really want to participate. Like, I'm not interested. And for this reason, there's 99% of movies and shows and things out there that are in the mainstream that most people are like hooked on and addicted to watching, right? Especially dramas. I can't relate. I can't participate in that because it doesn't align with my values. It doesn't reinforce the beliefs that I want to have and that I already have within me. And not to mention, like, everything that we consume, everything that is in our world is constantly influencing how we think, how we feel, how we show up, how we communicate. My gosh, like, you look at things in movies, right? And then you'll hear other people talking like that or acting like that. And so it really matters what you watch. It really matters what you consume. It really matters what you give your attention to, because it is influencing you 24/7, like music especially, right? The type of music you listen to. Are you listening to sad love songs all the time, or heartbreak songs? Those are the types of things that are going to keep you in an energy of heartbreak, that are going to keep you in that experience, keep you in the belief that is just what's out there, and that's what people experience, and this is what I'm experiencing too, and let's all be victims and cry together, right? Like, this is the kind of stuff it reinforces. How you think, feel, behave, and communicate are constantly recreating, interesting I said that, are constantly creating your reality. And your worldview and your beliefs are actually constantly contributing to creating reality itself on a collective level all the time. This is how we are all contributing to that oneness principle that I was talking about earlier. You are offering a vibration. I'm offering a vibration. And your vibration depends on how you think, how you feel, how you see yourself, how you see the world, how you communicate, how you interact with everything external to you. And my vibration offers how I think, how I feel, how I communicate, how I show up in the world, how I interact with everything around me. And what ties into this conversation beautifully now is to talk about the ego, because the ego is a mechanism within you It is a certain consciousness within you that is in constant survival mode. It is what it was designed for. Your ego is meant to save your ass when a tiger is chasing you. On the other hand, the ego is also meant to give you that boost. It gives you this confidence to move forward. Your ego is also what pushes you to take action. It is also what influences how you show up in the world on a daily basis, on a moment-to-moment basis. So an unchecked and unruly ego, one that is damaged from your upbringing, or one that is, I'm going to say misaligned. Let's use that word. Instead of saying like unhealed ego, it's a misaligned ego. It's a distorted ego. It's almost like the ego was once like this beam of light within you, and then it became this like morphed whatever and turned into something crazy, right? Through every experience, through the experience that you had from the grown-ups around you. So if you don't have deep self-awareness, if you are not present with yourself on a regular basis, then your ego is going to distort every experience that you have. Every single one. So something that someone says as a joke or to be funny or to be endearing, you could totally get offended by. And just take a look at the world and how much society has become this inflammatory, emotional response type of society where everyone is offended about everything nowadays. It feels like we all have to walk on eggshells around each other because God forbid you say some truth and you know, they'll freak out over it. And I want to use a personal example here about like an unchecked ego. And this was like back in the day. This is probably like 15 years ago, maybe even longer. I don't know. But I had a boyfriend once and we used to go for walks downtown Toronto. We lived in Toronto. And he always used to call me Piglet, especially when we first met. He used to call me Piglet. And I used to get so offended every time he would say that. I used to get so upset. And I would ask him, I'm like, are you saying I'm fat? Is that why you're calling me a piglet? And then he'd be like, no. He's like, oh my God, no. He's like, no, I'm calling you Piglet because he used to love Winnie the Pooh. He's like, because Winnie the Pooh, the cutest character in Winnie the Pooh is Piglet. It's just so sweet, so kind, so soft, and so gentle. And so he was comparing kind of personalities, saying that my personality was like Piglet's. But yet every single time he would call me Piglet, even after he explained that to me, I was still in such a triggered state. I was still in such an unconscious state at the time and still so insecure within myself that I would get offended every time. Like we would have like full on arguments about it. And then one day he was just like, well, fine then, I'm just not going to call you that anymore. He's like, but you're still missing the point. He's like, I'm saying it because I love you. I'm saying it because it's cute and you're cute. So I was like, I was just reminded as I was typing up my notes for this video, I was reminded of this as an example. I was like, wow, you know, do you do that? Do you have things that you notice that you get offended for that really just come from some type of a triggering? And that triggering is most likely connected to one of those 4 fears that I was talking about earlier, right? Not being loved or not being, not feeling like you belong, right? Is it connected to something like that? Now, psychology says that a child will 100% conform to its environment to get their needs met. These are the needs of being loved, a feeling of belonging, and protection from death, protection from getting hurt. Now, children don't have the 4th fear. They do not have a fear of separation from God because up until the age of 7, they are so purely connected. They so innately know that they are connected that it's not even a question. They also don't have ego developing yet at this age. So between the ages of 0 to 7, their ego is not developing yet. And so there is no separation from God. It's not even a fear. So all of your mental and emotional distortions, reactions we'll call them, will come from how well or not well these basic needs were met for you when you were a kid. This is also what started to formulate your worldview and shaped your ego's development. So let's look at what the ego actually is for a moment. An ego is nothing more than a filter for information, and it is a source of power and protection for you. That's what your ego really is, okay? The healthy, balanced, aligned ego is that. However, if you have a damaged ego or a misaligned ego, it becomes your primary source of fear and rejection. And by rejection, I mean self-rejection. And of course, it could be also rejection of others. So when the ego is misaligned or damaged, all of the information that is coming in to the conscious mind is filtered through this damaged filter, if we want to call it that, meaning that it won't allow, because the filter is damaged, it's not allowing anything to go deep, to be felt deeply. Everything, all the information coming in becomes very superficial. And this is where we end up with like information hoarding, where we're always just consuming more and more and more information, but we're not integrating anything. We're not learning anything. We're not becoming wiser. We are simply becoming overwhelmed and over bombarded and overburdened with the amount of information coming in. So that's why this month and next month, presence, stillness, and beingness is going to be the most important thing, because all three of these help to rebalance and realign your ego. It levels everything out. With an aligned, balanced, and healthy ego, you have clear boundaries, you have a strong work ethic, you are more focused on fulfillment, you're non-reactive, you're more selective about the information that you consume or the content that you consume. You'll be seeking more depth over superficial experiences or superficial connections. And you will have a natural desire to integrate your knowing through experiences versus stuff. So it's like you become less materialistic and you become more interested in becoming wise, literally. So now understanding the ego this way, can you look out into society and can you see how most of society operates right now? Can you recognize how most people are operating and constantly functioning out of a misaligned ego? And in order to get there, in order to realign your ego, you need to be present. You need to be still. You need to be in beingness. Less doing, more being. That is the magic formula. Because the more present you become, the more still and the more in beingness that you become, the more compassionately you can see yourself and the world around you. Your responses become kinder. You become more patient. You become more giving, more understanding towards others. You're going to be more resilient to triggers. And your actions are going to become more deliberate, more intentional. So you're going to be way less reactive and way less unconscious. So you instinctually will want to become a more loving human, and you're going to desire to experience that love through embodiment, meaning through experience, meaning through small acts of kindness. It's like you're just naturally going to be a more kind, more loving person, where you hold the door for a pregnant lady, or you hold the door for an elderly person, or you let somebody take a parking space that you both pull up to, or you allow somebody out of a parking lot, when you're sitting in traffic anyway. It's like these small little things are what really matter. And this is the day-to-day stuff that this November, December energy is talking about. Can you become more conscious in your day-to-day actions, especially now that we're heading into the holidays, moving towards Christmas? Like, people are already out shopping more, malls are getting busier, parking lots are getting busier, right? So it's like more patience, more kindness, more love is required for all of us to have a unified, better experience of life. And it makes a big difference. Even just smiling at strangers. I smile at strangers all the time. And I always get such a positive response. That's an embodiment. That's a full, visceral, physical experience of that love. So we're in this very special time, in a very purposeful time, where we have this huge opportunity. Again, I said between this week specifically, but all of November, all of December, you have this opportunity to upgrade your thinking, upgrade your communication skills, how you communicate with others, upgrade the meanings that you give to your experiences, to your interactions. You have an opportunity to upgrade how you express your individuality. And this energy is also encouraging all of us to become more objective, so less judgmental, less bias, and ultimately bias-free altogether. And this time is also going to be asking us to become more patient with the people that are really struggling through these energies, who, don't watch videos like this, who don't understand what they're moving through, and they're just triggered like mad, and they have no other way to respond to their triggers other than what they're used to, other than how they can respond from those damaged egos, from those misaligned egos within themselves. And these people are going to be struggling with objectivity. They're going to be struggling with communicating in a loving way. They're going to be struggling to have positive daily experiences, right? Because they're going to see the negative in everything. They're going to struggle to see the positive meanings behind their experiences or behind their interactions. And they're most certainly going to be struggling with expressing their individuality. You can't express your individuality when you don't even know who you are, when you don't even understand what makes you, you. So there's a lot of underlying fears right now that are heavily rising in the collective that this energy is meant to push out for awareness, that are deeply rooted in these primal fears that I talked about. Fear of not being loved, fear of not belonging, fear of death, fear of being separate from God. And the fear of being separate from God is actually connected back to fear of separation from the self. And yet, how many people are separated from themselves? So as you're out and about in your daily life, just living, running errands, doing your thing, just keep in mind that these fears that are surfacing for everybody in the collective right now are going to be acted out in different ways. And how you respond now that you have conscious awareness because you watch this video is going to really help you to show up better, is going to help you to be just a really good example in society for other people who are struggling. It also brings an energy of peace and calm. When you stay peaceful and calm with people that are frustrated, they actually will pick up your pace, like your energy and your vibe. But you got to be strong enough and courageous enough to not take on theirs. So take more time to be present. Take more time to just be instead of doing all the time. Take more time to be in stillness so that you can calm and realign your own ego so that you can be less triggered and more loving with those people who are really struggling through their unconsciousness right now. Can you be an example? Can you be that torchbearer, that light for other people? This collective awakening is really hard on a lot of people right now. So really do your best to not add to this difficulty by engaging in drama, conflict, arguments. Try and stay out of them. Try to see them from a higher perspective. Try to see the deeper truth, the ego, the 4 foundational fears that these people are reacting from. And I think you're going to have an easier time to be understanding, to be compassionate, first and foremost with yourself, and therefore with other people as well. If you do need some help or some support, some guidance through whatever process you're moving through, doesn't matter what level of consciousness you're at, I will leave a link in the description box to work with me. I do intuitive coaching. You can book a session there. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, for being present, for listening to this talk today. You can support the channel through hitting a like, subscribing, sharing this content, leaving a comment. I always love to hear your feedback. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.